Okay.
1 in 5 adults in America experiences a mental illness, yet nearly 60% of adults with a mental illness don't receive mental health services. An Uncrushed mission is to raise the awareness of many mental health challenges faced and how people have overcome them. Tim, welcome to the show. It's the West Coast of USA. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. It's always good to have these conversations, and glad we can reconnect with some other English, Irish, Northern Irish accents as well.
No, thank you. Well, looking at the face of value in sales, so providing value in sales is so important. A lot of salespeople will try and close deals, but they don't often offer enough value. And there's always a large chunk of the sales process before a deal takes place where you have to give value. So one of the things I do is to give value to a potential client is I will like their content. I will comment on their content on LinkedIn. I will often share their content. What kind of things do you do, Tim, to kind of give extra value to people in the world of business?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I started my sales career in 2007. I worked for Cable and Wireless Worldwide in Bracknell, which is now Vodafone. And it's a pretty commoditized space. I mean, there's certainly other industries which are more commoditized than that. But even back in 2007, there was such a focus there on really building those relationships. And I kind of prided myself on always being an individual that would get the job done. And just a simple thing like deploying something like a local area network, a wide area network. There are so many different dependencies throughout all the different stages, and so I'd always make sure that I was contactable at any time. I would always make sure that I'd be able to connect with different teams across the business and to be able to provide updates, be that single point of contact. And then if you fast forward to let's say over the last 5-6 years, there is some great research that's been used heavily by CEB, now Gartner, which really talks about how much of the buying process has been completed before the buyer reaches out to the seller. And so it really just shows the importance, at least to me, of why individuals need to have a strong presence on social media. I think LinkedIn is so important. And so one specific that I do is like I speak a lot about mental health on my LinkedIn network. And if I go back to 2007 at Cable and Wireless, I never would have dreamed of that. I thought I have to have the perfect image on there of me in this blue suit and on stage and keynoting and only speaking about Salesforce stuff or Vodafone stuff. But now I speak my truth, and that's because I know that for people that I want to work with or that want to work with me, they'll know who I am authentically, and that's really where some of the research from Brené Brown comes in around the importance of vulnerability and it's that point of being seen by other people, and I want to be seen for who I am.
Yeah, I think you brought up a great point there. I mean, Brené Brown's a terrific author. If you haven't seen her Netflix documentary, watch it. Her book, Dare to Lead, is excellent. And I believe strongly in the power of vulnerability, because that often leads to authenticity, which leads to trust, which leads to value. Keith, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, very much so. I was just writing down about vulnerability, and I think that's how you that is how you build trust, and on the basis of that platform, that important platform of trust, all other things can move forward. Like it's all very well offering value, but you need to be credible in the first place for that that value placed hole that we've all got somewhere in our heart and soul, for that to fit properly and be received in the right way. So that I'm very much key to that. One thing I would also say is pays an enormous compliment when you've done your research on that particular client, and social media plays a really big part in that. So I use the concept of a gift, taking a gift to a meeting, and I don't mean a bottle of scotch or anything like that.
That's a good gift.
Maybe, but the gift in terms of telling them something about their business or about their market that they didn't already know, and that's an enormous competitive differentiator when you are, and the salespeople, the profession of sales has gone up, I'm happy to say, over the last couple of decades, So salespeople need to be more consultative now. They need to be more expert in their client's arena, and you can no longer depend just on a pre-sales or a subject matter expert. You have to become the subject matter expert in the client's arena that you're talking to. So that notion of taking a gift, some insight into their market that they didn't already know, that's fabulously, that's solid gold right there.
Wonderful. Well, certainly as the founder and CEO of Uncrushed, it takes tremendous vision, stamina, skill to build a business. Talk to us about how you did that. How did you build value, and how did you really see that vision you had, Tim? How did that become success to you?
Yeah, so there were three of us that co-founded Uncrushed, and the reason I start with that is because the we is always more important than the I. I never wanted to be bigger than the organization, and so Janelle Cronk and Lindsay Boggs are two other individuals who really started the creation with us, and I got to a certain point, middle of 2017 for me was when everything in my life kind of came crashing down. And I started my journey of recovery, and I got to the point towards the end of 2018 where I got back to work, and I wanted to start speaking a little bit more openly about some of these conversations. And this is because going back to what I shared about on LinkedIn, in the middle of 2017, I thought I was all alone with some of the issues that I had, and couldn't possibly imagine that there's anyone else at work that had similar sort of challenges. So towards the end of 2018, I wanted to kind of waive my anonymity and start sharing some of my own experiences. Again, not thinking that I was fixed, thinking that I was better than. I just wanted to be vulnerable and share my truth. And that then turned into the creation of Uncrushed through myself, Janelle, and Lindsay. And then we built this amazing team of volunteers. So the majority of people on the team, we all have full-time jobs, whether that's an actual career job like corporation, or being a full-time mom, full-time dad. But the priorities that we lay out for all the individuals is that, number one, you put your health first. Number two, you put your friends and family second. Number three, you put your work third, and fourth comes Uncrushed. And so it's really interesting because I'm working, for a large technology organization that admittedly is very much people first and is great at that. But ultimately, it still is a very fast moving organization that has to deliver against certain targets and deadlines. And here I am with an organization where we're saying, hey, we want to grow, but at the same time, we want to be your lowest priority. And so it's been really interesting, just growth and the growth of it. And so we started off with putting out content there across the whole spectrum of mental health, whether it's people that have struggled with addiction, to depression, to grief, to sexual abuse, domestic violence, eating disorders. And we noticed that people all around the world wanted to use this platform to start sharing their stories. And I've always been pretty upfront with who knows where Uncrushed will be tomorrow, next year, 2 years. I'm a big advocate for other organizations that are doing the same thing. This isn't me trying to grow it in to be the dominant beast. I'm just trying to do my bit of saying, hey, if this had been something that was available and to me in the middle of 2017, maybe I would have reached out for help earlier. And it really goes back to the stat you read earlier on, Niraj, about the 60% of people that need support aren't reaching support. So if someone could just read one of their personal experiences shared on the website, which is now in a podcast, we go and do events, we go do training at corporations. If we can just connect with some individuals there that helps them to reach out to support and they don't become part of that 60%, it makes it all worth it.
That's great. You mentioned one thing which I think was so important: health first, family, friends second, work third, Uncrushed fourth. Now, even though I respect, admire that, most of the companies I do sales training with, it's work first. Family and friends is a very distant second, and health sometimes doesn't even come into it. What can we do? What do you do? And what can we do, all three of us even, to educate businesses more and to make them more aware about the importance of health and the importance of family and first, and make them realize if they do that, profits will come next.
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things there. I think first of all, we've all experienced in 2020 worldwide. I think health is very much at the forefront now, not just in terms of physical health, but mental health. So again, go back to that 1 in 5 stat. I think now probably 5 in 5 people are impacted as a result of everything that's been happening this year. And again, when we're saying you're impacted by mental illness, it doesn't have to mean like you have. I guess I don't want to call out anything specifically, so I don't perpetuate any stigmas. But my mind jumps to the worst possible thing I can think of. But it could even just be like, oh, I'm grieving not going to work, or I'm grieving not being able to go to the shops or to connect with some friends. So I think thankfully the COVID pandemic has acted as a catalyst to encourage many people to really look at what's important to them and to prioritize what's important to them, both in terms of health, friends, and family. I think, you know, we're when we're recording this episode at the beginning of June, we've seen some of the major events over the last few weeks, you know, and around Black Lives Matter and another horrific murder of a black man by the white cop. And it's again just bringing it to the forefront there, just like how is this impacting individuals, and we look at this a little bit on Crushed. Not only like if we look at I guess the African American communities, the Asian communities, there are certain stigmas there. Like we certainly don't speak about mental health, and so it's really interesting that this mental health is something that doesn't discriminate whatsoever. It impacts everybody. And so I think going back to your original question, now with all these different events that are happening in the world, health is coming to the forefront. And I think people are now starting to question, like, if and when they do go back to work and in an office, you know, maybe they don't want to be working at weekends anymore. Maybe now that they have had the experience of being locked down in their house and not being able to travel, unless you're one of Boris's cabinet, then you know, then you can ultimately value a little bit more some of the things that are available to you.
I think it's this whole COVID, if that's what you mean, Tim, this whole COVID-19 has forced us all. It's been kind of galvanizing in a way, because, as you say, it doesn't discriminate. It goes after everyone equally, and it forces us all to, we are all locked down. There's no one special, although, you know, one or two may have thought they were, but there's no one special that can avoid themselves of this sort of phenomenon. It has one of my clients is an HR director, and she's got the organisation of close on 1,000 people or so already over the hump, if you like, of no one has to be in the office all the time. We're already past that. We're comfortable. We trust our organization to be working from home, because all of a sudden they've had this realization, this epiphany almost, that you know, if you know, this whole out of sight, out of mind thing, that's last year. We're now in 2020, and if we don't trust our employees, then they shouldn't be there anyway. So we must trust them to work from home. And actually, the world is 17% cleaner as well, depending on whose stats you read. It's not all bad. There are some good things coming out of this, and maybe there's some sort of positive energy that we can all get a hold of around this to make the whole world a better place. And so that when we all show up for our roles, for our respective organizations, we're the best version of ourselves absolutely possible, and that benefits absolutely everyone.
Yeah, I want to actually ask you a question, Tim, about men and mental health, because all the audience on our podcast so far, 99% have been women. And all the public comments we've had on LinkedIn have been from women, which is interesting. And only 1 or 2 men have commented, and have commented to me privately. They haven't done it in public, they're doing it privately. So so how does Uncrushed help it? I mean, do you reach out to men and say, look, we gotta, because men don't like talking about these things. We just don't, either because of our egos, or we believe it affects our manliness. what can we do, or what do Uncrush do to kind of reach out to men and help them open up in a better way?
It's interesting. When Brené Brown started her research, she only interviewed women, and she shares this story of when she was doing a book signing, and a man walked up to her to get a book signed with his wife and 2 kids, and he asked that question, why don't you do research on men? And he shared that his family would rather see him die on his horse than fall off his horse. And that's always been so powerful for me. And I do think, it's this toxic masculinity that we have. I think, again, if you start to look at some of the cultural stigmas as well, like in England or UK or Britain or whatever we're called this time, this kind of stiff upper lip, and we don't share about this stuff. And so I certainly found, like, since moving to the US for me in 2015, a lot of my journey may not have happened if I'd stayed in England. And I know there are many advocates in England who are also working to change this conversation, but it really does depend, I think, on, West Coast, or if you're in Central America, or if you're on the East Coast, if you're in Asia, if you're in England, as well as looking at the male-female side of things. And so for me, what it really boils down to, when I talked about on Uncrushed, you have different people sharing different personal experiences. There may be some people that are able to relate to me, perhaps because I'm male, because I'm white, because I'm straight, because I work in tech, because of my age. And also for those reasons, people may not be able to relate to me. And so that's why it's so important that we have such a diversity of personal experiences. And that doesn't necessarily just mean based on an individual's ethnicity, sexual orientation, age, etc. But there are just going to be things to me that there are going to be certain things that will help others to connect. And this is something that's shared a lot in 12-step meetings, which is look for the similarities, not for the differences. And that's so important there as well. So, there is a big challenge for males. We also see this with a number of different events that we work on. We find it a lot easier to have female speakers to come up, and let me just be very clear, like, this is just as important for women still to come forward and still continue to contribute and to share. But it's interesting where we're in a world of getting more females, non-white people on stage presenting. Actually, I'm very happy around certain topics around mental health. I would actually love to get more males speaking on stage, because it's just not seen as much. One final example is me just sharing that I've got an eating disorder. I've had this perception before, and I've had people share this with me, that someone with an eating disorder is someone that's either extremely skinny or extremely overweight, and they're female. But someone that is actually fairly in shape and male, like, oh, how do you have an eating disorder? And so this really just falls under the importance of not perpetuating stigmas and breaking down these stigmas, and even going a level further, because sometimes people feel that saying, like, let's end the stigma is a little bit too soft. Like, we're stopping discrimination. That's really what we're talking about.
Understandable. Thank you so much. Well, look, as we come to the end of the show, what are the top 3 takeaways you could give us for anybody who's struggling with mental health? What are the 3 things you would say to them? I know it's not a quick fix solution, but what are the 3 things you could recommend to anybody if they had mental health challenges?
Okay, completely off the cuff here. I think first of all is just pausing. I share from my personal experience here. Sometimes things just become feel a little bit overwhelming. It's like a whole storm in my head. And to just taking that moment to pause and looking at the difference between what is fact, what is fiction. Secondly is building a personal board of directors, someone or a group of individuals that I trust. Who are the people that I can really reach out to and lean on for support. And then finally, receiving that support. And what I mean by that is, looking at things like, perhaps you need medication, and that doesn't mean that you failed. Perhaps you need a therapist. That doesn't mean that you failed. Perhaps you need to attend 12-step groups. Awesome. Like there's so much healing and benefit in any of these things. But I think that the first thing is just really pausing. Secondly, reaching out for help, and then 3, being open to receiving the help. And I'll just add kind of a bonus one for anyone if you're on the receiving end of this. Just holding that space. Again, Brené Brown has this great 2-minute video about the difference between sympathy and empathy. And so, if someone tells me like, oh, I'm going through this at work, and I could go, well, at least you didn't lose your job, or at least this, or at least that. That's sympathy. But empathy would be where I'm saying, I understand. Like I went through this. And so if you're on that receiving end, either sharing that, or secondly, just going, hey, I'm just going to hold this space for you. Like there's nothing I can say here, but I just want you to know that I'm holding this space for you. So just really avoiding that advice giving. Don't try and heal someone or fix someone. Even just patting someone on the back, that's actually a human way of saying, oh, you're making me feel uncomfortable because you're crying right now. Can you please stop it? So just allowing someone to have their experience.
I absolutely love that. Thank you so much. Well, look, such an important part of sales training that we do. It's not just what you talk about, it's what you take away. At the end of each show, we also have a lot of takeaways. So in terms of giving value in sales, like, comment, sharing people's content, when you're working with people, give them massive value along the way. Always be helping people. Being vulnerable in business is actually great. It makes you more human. The concept of health first, family and friends, work is superb. And the 3 things you just mentioned there about pausing, I love that, because people often don't just pause and take time out. People find it difficult stopping for a moment and not looking at their phone. They really do. They have to always be doing something. And a lot of the guests we've had in the show have talked about the importance of breathing deeply for 2 minutes, or just meditating, turning your phone off, walking in nature. This is also important. Build a board of directors or trusted people. And lastly, you said, about going into therapy or getting the right kind of medication. It doesn't mean you failed. It just means you're getting the right healing and the right benefits. That's incredible. Keith, I've been jotting down so many notes. Is there anything else you want to add to that at all?
Well, you did trigger a thought as you were talking, Tim, as you were talking just then around about thoughts, and a phrase that I heard a few weeks back when I was in a particular meeting was "take that thought to court." And so that's that whole notion of I think it was relating to imposter syndrome. That was the which we've talked about a lot on the show actually. That was the context that it was administered in, and actually, so that thought often leads to negativity. But actually, pausing, breaking off from that thought process and taking that thought to court. Really think about it. Is that really true? Probably not. Probably not. But yeah, I resonated with an awful lot of what Tim was saying. I'm so pleased you could make it onto the show. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, Tim, what is the best way for people to contact you and understand more about Uncrushed?
Yeah, you can email me at Tim Clarke with an E at uncrushed.org. You can go onto our website if you want to share your personal experience or get involved. And then we're across all the social channels. Yeah, and I may not respond immediately, but I will do my utmost, and I always do respond at some point. And, the biggest thing I will say is, like, if anyone is in crisis and in need of medical help, please call the appropriate number, 999, 911, depending on the country you listen to. Make sure you get the right care that is needed if it's urgent.
Yeah, and just before I go, I'd like to add, I spent time on uncrushed.org 3 nights ago, and I read so many beautiful and very touching articles written by so many terrific people about their challenges. And first of all, it was very comforting. It's always comforting to know people are going through challenges similar to you, but how they overcame it was wonderful. And I reached out to a few of those people like Hope Virgo, Silpa Patel, and just people like that have been very kind in their responses. So I definitely recommend going to uncrushed.org, reading the articles. That they really will help in so many ways. Well, look, if you have any questions or any points you want to raise on future shows, Or if you want to hire Keith and Neeraj for sales training, then please email hello@thrivingsales.com. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode.
Yep, this episode was brought to you by Monkey Pants Productions, who are a podcast productions company. They help businesses enter the world of podcasting through bespoke workshops and professional standard recordings. For more information, you can email pete@monkeypantsproductions.co.uk.
Now, Keith and I are both massive fans of the TV show Frasier. So until next week, we are both wishing you good sales, mental health. Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you so much, and everybody listening. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.